Go ahead.
Alright, if you had the opportunity to hear me speak about 2 weeks ago, then you were probably met with some amount of confusion. Maybe not as to the material at hand, but why exactly anything concerning Zimbabwe would be pertinent to you. I'm here to tell you that it is very relevant. See, the key concept was that land reform in Zimbabwe had displaced many citizens and had unlawfully taken their property. Well, how does this apply to you? Well, how many of you all, just see a show of hands, would like to be homeowners one day? It's fair to say everyone, right? It's natural to want to own your own home, own your own property, be a success. What if I told you you don't actually have that right? Because I'm telling you don't, or at least not in the manner you think you do. See, in the United States, there's a legal term, eminent domain, meaning the government has the right to seize your property as it sees fit. I'm here to tell you that the abuse of eminent domain by the government is one of the most outrageous problems in the United States right now. Although what happened in Zimbabwe is a much grander scale and it still has many parallels to what is going on here. The abuse of eminent domain does a disservice to this country, and it's a huge and blatant injustice to its victims. How is it an injustice? Well, there are a number of ways. The first of which is proper compensation. When the government seizes your property, it's supposed to pay you fair value. Well, time and time again, it does not. As you can see, this man has no money, and you will too if the government ever decides to repossess your property. See, the problem with proper compensation is it's very difficult to gauge land value or any other property value, especially with a market price. Also, what it does is it fails to compensate for the profit gained when they redevelop your former property. The dispossessed owners receive nothing. And as economist Jeffrey Turnbull put it, what eminent domain really fails to do is calculate social value, as in the intangible assets such as sense of community or place. None of that is considered. The other major problem is private interest. Similarly to lobbyist interest groups that you all may have heard of in your government class, private interest has their hand in the government's pocket at all times. It's true, exactly like this. Cartoonish and everything. It's but it's true. Private interest rules local government authorities. When they redevelop an area, they say, well, our reasoning is this: we need economic growth. However, it's really not the case. Really, these men are lining the pockets of these men and supporting these votes. It's a sham of a process. And according to Dana Berliner in Public Power, Private Game, more than 10,000 properties in New York City this past year were seized not for public reasons, but for private growth, such as in Brooklyn, where they're looking to build the new arena for when the Brooklyn Nets supposedly ever move. Or New Jersey Nets to Brooklyn. But this sham continues because they award these developers at a very low cost, they redevelop the area, they rake in these huge profits and give nothing back, pay no dividends to the people that were dispossessed of this property. And recently, in Kelo versus City of New London, Connecticut, the Supreme Court ruled that economic growth was a justification for eminent domain. Now, this is just a very vague idea, and has allowed many companies to just run rampant with their excuses for seizing property. What it further does is it kills the poor. Not literally, oh well yeah, somewhat literally. What it does is it targets the poor and minorities, because obviously you're not going to develop an area that's affluent and already developed. You're going to go where it's a little dilapidated, run down. So these people get bulldozed over, and although this is the cover of a single by the dead Kennedys, it is evident of the fact that the poor are marginalized. Also, it continues to violate the process of due law. It violates the 5th and 14th Amendments, your constitutional right to have just compensation. This is one of the fundamental cornerstones of the American democracy. But only 6% of appeals in New York City were heard over the last 4 years. 94% of people who dispossessed the land had no say. This is just a horrible problem. And according to the Yale Law Review, the chief problem with eminent domain is that there are no one has prior judicial rights. You can't appeal on first notice. You're dispossessed and then you can appeal, and as we see, the rate is very low for success. So to recap my main points, eminent domain is an unfair practice. It marginalizes the poor and minority groups. It fails to adequately pay its people that it dispossesses, and I challenge you to take up the campaign against eminent domain abuse. Visit organizations such as the Castle Coalition or Institute of Justice. But furthermore, I'd like you to know that the future is unwritten, and I encourage you to always know your rights. Thank you. God bless.